After the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, India went into a bizarre state of affairs. With a weak opposition, India came to a low point where we were covertly ruled by Antonia Maino, aka Sonia Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi's Italian widow with a dummy-like PM, Dr. Manmohan Singh. Mr. Singh was a 10-year seat warmer for Sonia's prodigal son, Rahul Gandhi. All pretenses of serving the nation were gone, and an open season of loot was declared in India. Corruption was rampant, the black market was thriving, and heinous acts of terrorism were common. The Congress party members were akin to monkeys trying to outmaneuver each other to catch Sonia's attention. There was a race on who could amass more illicit funds for the party or broker bigger kickback deals, and most importantly, effectively end the rise of any leader who could be a potential contender to Sonia's beloved son's place as the future PM of India. There were bomb blasts every other month. Temples, parliament, busy markets, festival times, trains, no place was safe. Until June 2006, the Pakistan-sponsored blasts had become such a regular occurrence that news channels would routinely collect the data on the location, casualties, damage, suspects, etc., and wait for a day for some Islamic separatist group to take responsibility for it over email. Congress, or should we say Sonia's government, took no measures whatsoever to ensure the safety of Indians. No effort was made to track funds, black money, hawala transactions, or the violent jihadis in the country. No effort was made to secure the borders. Whatever response was taken was to secure the minority vote bank. For example, Sharad Pawar's response to the 1993 serial blasts where 350 people were killed in Mumbai was a lie he concocted about a fake blast in a Muslim area to hint towards Hindu involvement too, so that the Islamic jihadi terrorists don't look bad.
Right.
So I straight away went to the television and I misled people, deliberately misled people. Instead of 11 bomb explosion, I told 12.
I see.
And one of the place which I mentioned was Masjid Bandar. It is dominated by minorities.
I see.
So I tried to send a message. It's not only in Hindu area, it is in Muslim area also.
Every attack increased our insecurities and uncertainties. Every attack brought India's credibility down in the world and bled our economy. The shift in the terrorism narrative happened perhaps somewhere in 2006 when the rise of a charismatic BJP leader, Gujarat's Chief Minister Narendra Modi, started giving Sonia sleepless nights. The task then was set for Sonia Party to remove the threat of Narendra Modi to Rahul Baba's future prime ministership. The two top Sonia pleasers were Chidambaram and Digvijay Singh. Digvijay Singh, erstwhile CM of Madhya Pradesh, had been stung with a horrifying defeat in his homeland by Uma Bharati of the BJP. He had vowed not to contest elections till he was not sure of a solid comeback. He needed to reiterate himself in Madam Sonia's eyes. Chidambaram too had so much to gain by way of kickbacks on so many deals and safety from any legal action that being in Sonia Madam's graces ensured. Digvijay Singh's strength was that he was considered Rahul Gandhi's political guru/advisor, and Chidambaram was the keeper of many secrets of Madam Sonia. It's important to remember that between March 1993 and July of 2006, India went through the trauma of 18 major terrorist attacks and the irreplaceable loss of 1,083 innocent lives. All were radical Islamist Pakistan-sponsored attacks. All. In time, it became clear that there was a resolve in the ruling Congress party to add a Hindu spin to the terror attacks. To finish Narendra Modi, they had to finish off BJP, and for that, RSS and its sister organizations had to be discredited. On June 1st, 2006, Mr. RVS Mani, who served as Under Secretary Internal Security Division in the Ministry of Home Affairs, was called at the Home Minister's office. The Home Minister at that time, Shivraj Patil, was present there along with Digvijay Singh and anti-terrorist squad Maharashtra Chief Hemant Karkare. In this meeting, strife with incorrect protocol, Digvijay Singh and Hemant Karkare inquired after the recent blast while Shivraj Patil looked on. RVS Mani was asked repeatedly about the perpetrators of the bomb blast and if those in any way were Hindus, despite being told that the masterminds were Islamic terror groups who had taken responsibility for their acts. Looking back, a small explosion at Nanded was a test run to set the foundation of a fake Hindu terror narrative. The explosion had happened a week before this said meeting at the Home Minister's office, where the term Hindu terror was floated. The Nanded case was handed over to the CBI and a ruse was constructed that a member of Bajrang Dal had planted the bomb. RVS Mani clarified that till then such a dal had no mention whatsoever in their intelligence records. The CBI was called in, which found and maintained that it was just a factory accident. Then the CBI officer in charge of the investigation was sidelined for a big promotion, thereby sending a clear signal on the consequences of not towing the ruling party's narrative. From September 2006 to October 2008, a series of blasts happened at Malegaon, Samjhauta Express train, Mecca Masjid, Ajmer Sharif, and Malegaon again. Like in the old format, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Ahle Hadith, Dawood's henchmen and Al-Qaeda-backed Arif Kasmani came forward to stake claim over these blasts. All the records in the ministry had Lashkar or ISI-backed Islamic terrorists as the perpetrators. Even US intelligence indicated the hand of Pakistan-based Arif Kasmani in the attack. Eyewitness accounts were recorded that recognized the perpetrators. During narcotics tests, prime accused Simi activists confessed their involvement in the Samjhauta Express and Mecca Masjid blasts. The ATS at that time maintained that ISI, Lashkar, Simi had planned and executed the blast to cause communal tension.
Your investigation said that there were at least 9 Muslim youths who carried out 2006 Malegaon blast. How confident are you of your investigation even today?
I still today stand by my investigation. Whatever accused we had arrested, whatever evidence we collected, having been satisfied with the evidence collected and coming to know the whole conspiracy, we had filed the charge sheet in the court of law, and I stand by my investigation even today. At no point of time I had any doubt about my investigation.
But suddenly, the narrative was changed when Hemant Karkare came in as the ATS chief. In spite of irrefutable proof, all suspects, including Pakistani terrorists, were released, given a clean chit and allowed to go back to Pakistan. Please remember that our Indian Kulbhushan Yadav, who was abducted from Iran, is still in captivity in Pakistan. Anyway, in this mountain of jihadi evidence, Hemant Karkare somehow sniffed Hindu terror and quickly realized it was the work of a far-right Hindu outfit called Abhinav Bharat. I don't want to even get into the loophole fraught, cardboard-like premise because it's an assault to the intellect. The real premise was to discredit BJP and to finish Modi. Anyway, the drama of rounding up a fresh set of suspects started. Today, I will discuss the plight of two main suspects charged under the draconian Makoka, where confessions recorded by the police were considered evidence. Makoka applied to Maharashtra. The first suspect I will talk about is Sadhvi Pragya Thakur. A Sadhvi is a woman who has renounced the worldly pleasures to lead a life devoted to the Hindu faith. She was an active member of the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad and later various RSS organizations. Sadhvi Pragya was a suspect because an old bike of hers that she had sold off a couple of years back was used to plant the Malegaon bomb. That was the whole premise of her arrest. She was unofficially arrested on 10th of October 2008. Her arrest, however, was recorded only on the 23rd of October. For those 13 days, she was mercilessly tortured on the orders of Hemant Karkare to get a confession from her. Here is an extract from an application that she wrote in her 5th year of detention to a judge in the Mumbai High Court. She introduced herself as a respectable, patriotic citizen and a sannyasini. She was called to Surat by an ATS officer at the pretext of helping them with investigation by furnishing details regarding her bike. Considering it her duty, she went to Surat. The ATS officer cheated her by telling her that her information would be useful for their senior officer and that she should come to Mumbai. Please remember, Makoka and Hemant Karkare were Maharashtra based. In Mumbai, she was unofficially detained and was subjected to gruesome third-degree torture. She was gagged, given no food or water, and mercilessly beaten with leather belts and thrown about by male officers non-stop. No woman officer was ever present there. Her lungs and her diaphragm got damaged. She was admitted to a private hospital because she simply could not breathe. After a few days, she was discharged and the brutality started all over again. Oscillating between conscious and unconscious state, she was on the verge of dementia. Her faith was attacked as while she was being tortured, she was forced to watch pornographic tapes. She was paraded naked. She was kept hungry and then force-fed eggs. Her associates were called into the police station and were coerced into abusing and insulting her. When another accused of the case, Sudhakar Chaturvedi, was released, he narrated how he would overhear Sadhvi Pragya's tortured cries. Sadhvi Pragya was in jail for 9 years. During captivity, she developed cancer. She was taken to the hospital for records, but no doctor was ever consulted. Please compare her case to that of Safura Zargar, who, in spite of serious proof of her crimes in the Delhi riots, was granted bail because she became pregnant. Thakur was eventually given a clean chit by the NIA. The court dropped charges against her under MCOCA, but she is being tried under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. The Bombay High Court granted her bail finally in 2017. So what was the reason for Sadhvi Pragya getting dragged into the Hindu terror narrative of the Congress? Could it be because she was a rising political force that thousands used to throng to hear her fiery speeches? Could it be that Digvijay Singh extracted revenge because she had assisted Uma Bharti when Digvijay Singh was trounced in the elections? Ironically, Sadhvi Pragya stood for 2019 elections against Digvijay Singh and served him with a debilitating and humiliating defeat. The demonic trauma inflicted on Sadhvi Pragya has taken a severe toll on her. Gone is the spunky young woman who chopped off her beautiful hair lest she may succumb to vanity and may deter from the path of serving her nation. Her health has suffered immensely, but she continues to march on. She remains committed to her faith and to her motherland. While researching her case, I did not come across any assistance that RSS or the Akhadas extended, and it seems they distanced themselves from her. If that is the case, then are we surprised that no comprehensive pressure has been created for Palghar lynchings of two innocent aged sadhus? If an organization does not stand for its members, then who will? The second suspect I would like to discuss here is Lieutenant Colonel Shrikant Purohit. He was accused of being a part of the Hindu terror attacks as a planner and an RDX supplier. Purohit was serving in the infantry division of the army and was deputed to the intelligence wing after he suffered severe knee injury during anti-terrorist operations at Uri in Kashmir. His knee had to be reconstructed. Colonel Purohit had developed a useful intelligence network of informants and was successful in unmasking the dangerous expansion of terror group SIMI, that is Students Islamic Movement of India, and its links with Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI. The confidential reports by his seniors were always complimentary. For example, in his 2006 report, it said that he infiltrated the SIMI and other underground outfits in the region, and his 2008 report said that he developed an effective informant network in his area of responsibility, which led to Naxals, Maoists, and the terrorist acquisition. When investigation of Malegaon bomb blast was going on, Purohit was doing a course in Arabic language in the Army Education Training College at Panchmadi in Madhya Pradesh and was active in intelligence gathering. From what we can make out, he was investigating the Hindu terror conspiracy and was working on the Abhinav Bharat organization, but we will never know for sure because it's intelligence work. ATS Chief Hemant Karkare claimed that Purohit was one of the Abhinav Bharat's founders under the guise of a farmer. How is this incriminating evidence? Why would an intelligence person who is on a secret undercover mission of infiltrating an organization reveal his real identity? Purohit wore a skull cap and mixed with the local Muslims to extract information from them. So then, was he a radical Islamic terrorist too? Such was the desperation of Hemant Karkare and Congress to frame this serving army officer that all rules and protocols were broken. As per Mr. Money, such an order needs to travel around 25 to 30 official desks before the go-ahead comes to arrest an army person. This was all bypassed when he was picked up from the training school in Panchmadi on October 29, 2008 by a certain Colonel R.K. Srivastav with an order from the Delhi Intelligence Headquarters to join with them for a discussion. After being issued a movement order, all his mobile phones were confiscated and he was taken to a Mumbai interrogation center. Then his torture started in the presence of Hemant Karkare and Parambir Singh to force him to own up responsibility for the Malegaon blast. I have added a 24-page complaint of Colonel Purohit to the National Human Rights Commission in the description because the torture inflicted on him by brutally hurting his dignity and his body, including his private parts and the knee he injured during his service to the nation, cannot be read out.
What happened was, they tied his legs and each leg they tied a rope and pulled it apart. It was so bad. He was time again telling that I have had surgeries on my knee. Please don't do this. They didn't listen. And then
In his letter to the army, he had said that not even prisoners of war were treated this way. In an Outlook magazine interview, he said, "Today it is me. Tomorrow it could be anyone else. It is a warning signal to all intelligence officers." After the death of Karkare during the Mumbai attacks, the case came to NIA in 2011. NIA found that the ATS had planted the RDX that was recovered with Colonel Purohit.
मेरे को मैं जो आंखों से देखा हूँ, मेरे आंखों से मैं देखा है कि क्या चला है, फेक है। पूरा मैं देख के बता रहा हूँ आपको कि फेक है इन्वेस्टिगेशन।
फॉर एग्जाम्पल RDX के एंगल
अब सब प्लांट किया हुआ है। वो
कौन प्लांट किया?
तब के जो भी अधिकारी है कोई।
When you say अधिकारी, you're talking about the ATS or the government?
ATS गवर्नमेंट का भी हो सकता ना, वो क्या है?
The army had conducted its own court of inquiry which exonerated the officer. But since the charges were related to terrorism, the army could not claim his custody as per the army law. The Supreme Court finally granted the officer bail on August 21st, 2017. Throughout the 9 years of his incarceration, the army did not even suspend him as they were convinced of his innocence despite pressure from the earlier UPA government, which, while in power, was aggressively pursuing the case to prove the non-existent Hindu terror.
Sir, the first question here, for 10 years, he's been labelled a terrorist. The Congress concealed documents that were available with them for 10 long years. This man suffered in prison. He didn't have a family life. His family was outside. And yet, these documents that were with them, that's unmistakable proof of his innocence, was not brought out by them. How do we view this?
Look, firstly, I want to know who sent him to prison. Was he tried in a court of law? Did the court of law find him guilty? Was he court-martialed? Did the court-martial find him guilty? What evidence was produced to send this officer, Colonel Purohit, to prison for, as you say, 10 years and more?
This feeling of support and camaraderie was evident when Purohit was released from prison. He was collected in an army vehicle and driven to his last unit to restart his service. The reason why Colonel Purohit was fraudulently arrested relates entirely to the work he was doing. The Congress government should have paid heed to his information and broken the back of jihadi terrorism in the coastal regions of India. But then that would have gone against their dirty politics. So instead, they sidelined Colonel Purohit. As Indians, we owe our deepest gratitude to our esteemed armed forces for their unbelievable commitment to our nation. The life of an intelligence officer takes this patriotism to the next level. They live their lives in constant danger with next to no connection with their families, friends, or fellow officers. To torture and malign such heroes is unpardonable and needs strict legal action. I wish to also bring attention to how the system rewards officers like Hemant Karkare and Parambir Singh. All the accused mercilessly tortured by Parambir Singh had said that he and Karkare wanted to implicate them by hook or by crook. BJP's Devendra Fadnavis had demanded action against Parambir Singh when he was in opposition. But when he became Maharashtra's chief minister, Fadnavis promoted Singh and appointed him as commissioner of Thane, where, by the way, Singh went on to assist Arbaz Khan, Salman Khan's brother, in 2019 when he was caught in a big cricket betting scandal and allegedly arranged a complete clean chit for him. Now he is the police commissioner of Mumbai, and you can judge his work ethics yourself in the way Sushant Singh Rajput's mysterious death case was handled and the protection given to the celebrities. Also, all the fake information in planning the Hindu terror theory was propagated by certain media houses, especially the Tehelka magazine, that had minute-to-minute updates on the secret, highly sensitive, ongoing investigation. How come? Why was the ATS never pulled up over leaked crucial evidence to the media? Do you know the two lead investigative journalists who were writing long articles to establish Hindu terror based on this leaked information? Rana Ayub and Ashish Khetan. Their agenda still is pretty much the same. Even today, nobody questions the acquittal of dangerous, murderous terrorists that were released to frame innocents. Congress made these blasts an international embarrassment because in the dossiers sent to Pakistan, they kept blaming them, but in India, they kept fueling this bogus Hindu terror theory. They made ATS, NIA, and police look like bumbling fools by pressurizing them into making a fake case. They broke the morale of the army and particularly the intelligence officers. But their most dangerous plan to establish Hindu terror was yet to unleash on India. The 26/11 Mumbai attacks.